My name is Marcus Langley. I'm 39 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in the family. The calm observer, the peacemaker, the one who keeps receipts but rarely shows them. I run a private investment firm now, but you wouldn't guess it by how my family treats me. To them, I've always just been the tech guy with his head in the clouds. I never flaunted my success, never tried to control the room, but one thing I don't tolerate, no matter who you are, is theft, especially from the people you claim to love. It started when I noticed missing funds from the family's shared estate account. It's a legacy account my grandfather set up, meant to help cover emergencies, education and medical needs for our aging mother. My older brother, Darren, always played the charming golden son, the one who could do no wrong. But charm doesn't erase numbers, and the numbers didn't lie. I spent 3 quiet nights going through spreadsheets, tracing transactions he probably thought no one would notice, but I noticed. And once I confirmed he'd funneled nearly $180,000 into his failing business, I had a decision to make. At first, I approached him directly. I didn't go in guns blazing. I gave him a chance. We were standing on the balcony after dinner one night. I had printed out the statements, handed them to him calmly, and asked, "Do you want to explain this before I take it to the rest of the family?" He looked at me for a moment, eyes darting like a trapped animal, and then said, "It's not what you think." But it was. It was exactly what I thought. And the next day, I told everyone. The reaction wasn't what I expected. My sister went silent. My aunt looked heartbroken. But the worst came from my parents, specifically my mother. She didn't yell, she just looked disappointed in me. "Why would you bring this up right before the birthday trip?" she asked, as if the timing of the truth was more offensive than the betrayal itself. Darren spun his narrative fast, said I misunderstood, exaggerated, that I was jealous of his role in the family, and somehow they bought it. Or at least they chose to. The next morning, I checked my email and saw the itinerary for the family's trip to Lake Como, Mum's 70th birthday celebration, but my name was missing. No invite, no ticket, no explanation, just silence. They had decided to protect the liar and exclude the one who spoke up. I sat there for a full minute, staring at that empty itinerary, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, not anger, not sadness, just clarity. I made one phone call, just one. You see, the private jet they were about to board, it's owned by a holding company. That holding company is owned by a private trust, and that trust, it's managed by me. Quietly, legally, entirely. They didn't know it yet, but the flight they were counting on was about to be grounded. Not because I was bitter, but because I was done being silent. The cancellation wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming match, no confrontation at the airport. I simply logged into the trust account, issued a formal revocation of flight access for that day, and sent it through official legal channels. The pilot received notice within minutes, and just like that, the luxury jet that had always been there for family events, funded quietly by my firm through layered investment vehicles, was unavailable, not delayed, not rescheduled, unavailable. I didn't need to shout. All I had to do was stop saying yes. They found out when they arrived at the terminal with luggage, champagne, and designer luggage in tow. My brother called me first. I let it ring. Then came the texts, "What the hell, man? We're stranded. You're being petty." I read each one slowly, like a fine print contract. There was something satisfying about it. Not because I was being cruel, but because it was the first time they had to feel the weight of taking me for granted. The family group chat exploded. My aunt asked if this was a mistake. My sister sent a single message, "Marcus, this is low." But no one asked me why. No one said, "Did you really own the jet this whole time?" or why didn't we know? Instead, they focused on what they lost, not what they did to lose it. That's when I knew I'd done the right thing. I wasn't punishing them. I was just removing the benefits they had never earned. Darren finally sent a voice note. It was filled with forced calm. Look, bro, I know things got twisted, but this isn't the way. You're blowing this up over numbers you don't understand. That was Rich telling me I didn't understand numbers. I've spent 2 decades managing wealth portfolios larger than his entire net worth. But I didn't reply. I just archived the message and went back to work. Let him spin stories to people who wanted to be lied to. I was done explaining myself to those committed to misunderstanding me. Later that night, I got a call from the pilot. They were angry, said they'd take legal action. But I reminded them that the owner had final discretion. His tone was calm, even amused. They didn't know, did they? I smiled. No, I said. They never cared to ask who was really behind the generosity they enjoyed. And that was the point. They were never grateful, just entitled. They loved the access, but never respected the source. Now that the door was closed, they weren't asking how to fix it. They were demanding it be reopened. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about finally putting value on my own boundaries. And from here on out, access was no longer free. The fallout didn't just land at the airport. It followed them home. The birthday trip was rescheduled last minute, using commercial flights. First class, of course, but it wasn't the same. They arrived a day late, missed the villa check-in window, and Mom's big surprise dinner, cancelled. The pictures they posted online told a story of elegance and grace. But the messages behind the scenes, the frantic calls, the tension between siblings, told the real story. The illusion was crumbling, and I didn't have to say a word. What shocked me most was how quickly the blame turned inward. Claire started digging. She wanted to know how I could suddenly have so much control. She's smart, always has been, but she's used to people handing her answers. This time, all she found was a quiet legal trail, trust accounts, shell companies, silent partnerships. She texted me, "Did you really fund the jet all these years?" I responded with a single word, "Yes." That was the moment the tone changed. Not in anger, in fear. The power dynamics had shifted. Then my aunt called, not to scold, but to apologize. She said, "Marcus, I didn't realize how much you've been doing for this family. I think some of us owe you an apology." I told her she didn't owe me anything, because she wasn't the one who twisted the truth. I could hear the regret in her voice. She said, "Mom hadn't stopped talking about how everything felt different this year." I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to hear it. I already knew. Meanwhile, Darren had gone quiet. The silence from him was strategic. He was likely scrambling, trying to cover his tracks, figuring out if I planned to go further. What he didn't know was that I'd already set the wheels in motion. An anonymous audit request had been submitted for the family foundation, just enough to force transparency. I wasn't trying to ruin him. I was simply ensuring that truth had a seat at the table, whether they liked it or not. That week, I noticed something else. Old friends from the family began reaching out. Distant cousins, mutual acquaintances, even Mom's old bridge partner. Their tone was different, measured, curious. I could see it in their subtext. They wanted to know how the quiet one had taken control of the chessboard, but none of them asked what mattered. Why I did it, because the truth is, they already knew. They just never thought I'd be the one to act. For years, I had stayed silent, thinking peace came from patience. But peace, real peace, sometimes comes when you stop playing small. When you stop swallowing what you know is wrong, just to keep others comfortable. My silence had once protected them. Now, It was exposing everything they refused to see. Within 2 weeks of the cancelled jet, the cracks in their carefully polished facade began to widen. Darren called a private meeting with my mother and sister, trying to regain control of the family narrative. He painted me as vengeful, claimed I was manipulating power to humiliate him, but the more he spoke, the more he revealed. Because under pressure, truth leaks, even from the most charming liars. He admitted to the temporary redirection of funds, tried to frame it as a business decision, but this time they didn't swallow it whole. Mom called me after that meeting. Her voice was softer than usual. "I don't like what this is doing to the family," she said. I replied, "Then maybe it's time the family stops pretending lies are love." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I never expected. "I think I believed him because I didn't want to admit we'd chosen the wrong son to trust." The words stung, but they freed something in me. I didn't need validation anymore. But I wasn't immune to truth finally spoken. Meanwhile, Claire had stopped defending Darren altogether. I got an email from her, formal, almost like a letter. She wrote, "You were right, and I was wrong to protect him." I didn't want to lose the version of the family I grew up believing in. I didn't respond right away, not because I was angry, but because I understood. Sometimes we all cling to lies dressed up as legacy. And sometimes the people we love most are the ones who make us question our own eyes. Darren's life began to unravel further. The foundation audit exposed more misappropriations, loans disguised as grants, travel expenses billed under false names, all of it traceable. He started losing board seats, credibility, and worst of all, silence. People were whispering now. The same people who once laughed at my quiet nature were suddenly seeing me not as invisible, but as intentional. Turns out, power held quietly is the kind people respect the most, once it reveals itself. As for me, I stayed the course. I didn't gloat. I didn't push the narrative. I simply did what I'd always done, handled things behind the scenes with clarity and control. But now, I was doing it on my terms, no longer to protect the illusion of family harmony, but to rebuild integrity around what should have been sacred. You see, revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to come with shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes, it's as simple as holding up a mirror and letting people see who they really are. Darren was finally facing that mirror, and I was finally walking forward without needing to look back. By the time spring rolled in, the family group chat had turned into a ghost town. The usual updates, party invites, and casual gossip had vanished. There were no more collective dinners, no more planning committees. Without someone funding the structure behind the scenes, the scaffolding fell. I watched it happen with the same calm I used to watch them dismiss me. Only now they knew exactly what my silence meant and why it terrified them more than anything I could have said out loud. Darren tried to pivot. He started telling people he had stepped away from the foundation to focus on personal projects. But whispers travel faster than press releases. Investors pulled out. Vendors stopped responding. And our mother, once his fiercest defender, stopped answering his calls entirely. The truth didn't need a headline. It just needed time. And time, at last, was working in my favor. I got a letter one afternoon, handwritten, formal, almost nervous in tone. It was from Darren. "I know I messed up," it read. "I never thought it would get this far. I miss how things used to be." I stared at those words for a long while. How things used to be. He missed the version of life where I absorbed the blows in silence, and he got to keep his mask on. He missed comfort, not truth. And that was something I could no longer afford to give him. I never responded. I didn't tear the letter up. I didn't frame it. I just placed it in a drawer and closed it. That's what closure is sometimes, not revenge, not resolution, but the choice to no longer engage in the performance. When someone shows you that your honesty is an inconvenience to their image, believe them the first time. The jet remained grounded, not just for them, but for everything they represented. It was never about the flight. It was about boundaries, about removing access to someone they had mistaken as a resource rather than a person. And the more I honored that truth, the more my peace returned, not as something fragile, but as something earned. My mother reached out again, this time with sincerity. She said she was sorry, that she had been wrong, that watching everything fall apart made her realize how much I had held together without ever demanding credit. I told her gently, I didn't need credit, I just needed truth. We're rebuilding now, slowly, quietly. No performances, no pretenses. Just honest conversation between two people who finally see each other clearly. Darren, on the other hand, faded. Not entirely, but in the way people do when the mask has cracked and there's nothing behind it. The family no longer followed his lead. He still tries, occasionally, to resurrect the old image. But now, no one claps. Because once a liar's applause fades, all that's left is the echo and the memory of who helped you hear it. I never set out to break anyone. I just stopped holding everything up. And once I did, I realized how much of my life had been spent in quiet service, offering, fixing, covering, absorbing. I had become their safety net, not by request, but by assumption. And when I pulled that net away, the fall wasn't my fault. It was theirs, for never looking down in the first place. My days are quieter now, but not empty. I've rechanneled the energy I once gave to rescuing people into building things that matter: mentorship programs, scholarship grants, clean financial education for kids aging out of foster care. I don't advertise it. I don't slap my name on it, but it's there, and it's changing lives. Because when you've spent a lifetime giving without thanks, the best healing comes from giving to those who don't expect it. My sister and I talk occasionally now, carefully, respectfully. We don't pretend things didn't happen, but we also don't dwell on them. Sometimes healing doesn't require full understanding, just acknowledgement. She said to me recently, I think I always knew you were the backbone. I just didn't want to admit it. I appreciated that, and I left it there. Some truths don't need to be turned into therapy, they just need to be heard. My mother's birthday came around again. This time, no jets, no villas. Just a quiet dinner in her backyard, lit with candles and surrounded by people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were promised anything. She held my hand after dessert and said, "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we didn't deserve you." I didn't reply. I just squeezed her hand back. Some apologies don't need words to be received. And as for Darren, I haven't seen him in almost a year. I hear things. He's moved cities, started some consulting firm, trying to regain footing. I wish him no harm, but I also owe him nothing. What I gave freely. What I reclaimed, I took with intention. That's the line I walk now, generosity with clarity, and it's changed everything. Because in the end, my story wasn't about vengeance, it was about value, about finally recognizing my worth. Not as something to be proven, but as something to be protected, and from this point forward, I protect it fiercely. People always expect the grand finale, the confrontation, the ruined reputation, the applause. But I've learned something far more powerful. When you truly take your power back, you don't need anyone to see it. You just need to feel it. And I do. Every single day, in the quiet, in the freedom, in the fact that my peace no longer depends on their permission. I still keep the letter Darren wrote. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that sometimes the ones closest to you will cross lines they never should have approached, not because they're evil, but because they believe your silence means surrender, and when you finally draw the line, they'll act like you're the one who changed. But I didn't change. I just stopped participating in my own disrespect. If there's one lesson I carry now, it's this. You are allowed to walk away from people who only loved you when you were useful. You are allowed to protect what you built. You are allowed to say no more without an explanation. Boundaries don't make you cold, they make you clear, and clarity is what saved me. Some family members have started reaching out again, slowly. I decide who gets through, who earns trust again. I'm not closed off. I'm just no longer wide open. That version of me, the one they took for granted, is gone, and in his place stands someone far more dangerous, a man who knows his worth, and will never again bargain it for belonging. To anyone listening who's been the silent one, the generous one, the one who kept the peace at the cost of your own, let this be your reminder. You are not selfish for outgrowing what no longer honors you. You are not wrong for refusing to be the family's foundation when all they do is build castles on your back. My peace was never free. I just finally stopped giving discounts.